Welcome to another edition of PENSDOWN. This is where we sit with journalists to get to understand what they have gone through in gathering, processing, and packaging the news for us. Their journalism journeys. That's what we talk here. Today, I have been joined by a colleague. Richard Annerquaye is a business journalist with over a decade experience. He is the managing editor of Business 24 Ghana, a digital media platform that focuses on Ghana's business, economic, and financial sectors. He has in the past worked with the Business and Financial Times newspaper, City FM, and the Multimedia Group, where he was an invaluable addition to each setup, rising through the ranks from business journalist to online editor and business editor at various times. His journalistic works focus mainly on, but not limited to, macroeconomy, technology, banking and finance, and agriculture. He is very good at feature writing, where he brings his knack for insightful analysis and fact-based interpretation to bear on making valid projections and conclusions on various topical issues on the Ghanaian economy. He is a product of Ghana Institute of Journalism, Rhodes University, and the Cambridge Center of Excellence. Currently, he is a graduate student of Columbia University, New York. Thanks for joining us, my brother.
All right, thank you, Stephen.
Quick one, I'm a bit curious. 2020 was the year COVID-19 bruised a lot of setups and businesses. Yeah. But I get from your profile that Business 24, your digital media platform, was born in the heat of COVID-19. Am I right?
Yeah. So the plans to establish Business 24, just like any business, started way before 2020. So as far back as late 2019, discussions were being held to establish Business 24. In January, I think the plans were firmed up, and by February the paper had started. And yes, at that point, COVID seemed distant. It was more or less like a problem of China, and nobody actually knew how COVID would disrupt the world order. So we went to, and I must say I joined after the company was established, but not long after it was established. So at that point, discussions were being held. Around February, business starts, March COVID hits, and everything just goes berserk. So it was more or less like you've made plans, right? So how do you go back on them? And so we actually started, I should say, right in the middle of the pandemic. Because a few publications came out, but then we're just like we had like a head-on collision with the pandemic. And the option was, okay, so you paid for rent. You've employed people who took your word for it. They quit the organizations, they've joined you, and less than a month you want to call it quit. It's not going to be possible. So we just had to see if we can brave the odds and become successful. I think we were quite successful at that. But of course, in pandemic times, businesses were cutting down on expenditure. And of course, one of the things they are most likely to do is cut down communications or advertising revenue. So a lot of the commitments we had initially, everything just froze. And then it means that we just had to dig into our resources, and that wasn't quite easy. And I joined, so when the pandemic started, I remember the first case, when the first case was declared in Ghana, I was on I was on my way home from City FM, and at that point, I had told myself I've told my employers I was leaving. So, but I didn't know I was going to join Business 24, because my point is I wanted to have some time to myself and kind of hibernate and then go back to school. So when I left City FM and the pandemic hit, restrictions here and there, everything was thrown into disarray. So I was thinking to myself, so what if I go and spend all that I have to pay for my fees now that I'm not working? How am I going to cope? So I said, okay, so let me find something part-time to do. So that was what pushed me to Business 24. And luckily for me, these are people I've worked before, and they've been courting me for a while, even before I tendered in my resignation. But then I had not really given it a thought. So when the pandemic hit and I realized, look, I can't spend my resources. Let me just find something to do while I wait for everything to ease up. Then I go back to school. So that's how come I joined Business 24.
Wow. How did you arrive at the decision to pursue journalism as a profession in the first place?
Well, I think it's a combination of something that I love and something that I went into accidentally. It's kind of confusing, but when I started, like as a kid growing up, I never thought of myself as a journalist. Yes, I would wake up in the morning. There's a newsstand close to where we lived. So I would just go and be reading the news headlines. I mean, and this was even before I turned 10 years. So I'll be reading the news headlines on my way to school. I'll do so. My dad will come home, bring newspapers. I'll continue from there and all that. So I think that's my first exposure to journalism. And when I finished junior secondary school JSS, I thought that, look, I've been reading newspapers for a while. And sometimes, I mean, my dad at that time will buy Daily Graphic, I think Ghanaian Times, and Mirror, the Weekend Mirror, and PMP at that time. So those were like my 4 papers I was reading. But when I go on the newsstands, I see so many papers, so many stuff, and there's only much my dad could buy. So when I finished junior secondary school, I knew a guy who worked as a delivery boy. And I told him, so look, I want to work with you. And so he took me to one of the biggest newsstands I'd ever seen.
Wow.
So so I was like, wow, this is great. So
is that a circle?
No, so it was somewhere around Latvia Koshi, Radio Gold.
Okay.
Yeah, Radio Gold. Yeah, because the newsstands I was used to was a guy with a table, like a normal table with. So that was like limited. That was limited. I mean, if you're lucky, sometimes if I'm lucky, I get someone who has bought a paper and will take a seat there. Then I'll tell him, can I go through your paper? And it's always not guaranteed. But I figured out that, look, if I'm working at the newsstand, I can have access to the paper or the papers. So I was employed, and I think for me, that was my first real job. And the satisfaction I got from it was not really even about the money, because the money was, I think in today's terms, I cannot even quantify it, because it's kind of, I think about 2,000 cities back then. And 2,000 cities back then was, I think it would be about 20 pesos.
Maybe so. Something like that, yes.
Yeah, 20 pesos or so. So I would wake up in the morning. No one actually knew where I would go, because I had finished JSS. And because it's mostly in the morning, my dad would be going to work. My mom will also be going about her days. And I'll just sneak out, go and take the papers, distribute to some of the customers of the newsstand. And then when I come back, I have access to all the papers. And for me, it was amazing because I was just looking at myself. This is someone whose entire dream, anytime I wake up, I want to read all the newspapers as much as I could. And now I have access. So the money really wasn't even anything for me, because even in those days, when you look at it, it wasn't anything at all. It was just like a token. But then for me, the access to the papers meant so much for me. And so that kind of exposed me further. And I continued all the way to senior secondary school, where, I mean, it was like a routine. Wake up in the morning, about to catch a bus, go and read the headlines, join a bus, get to school, go to the library, read all the newspapers you can. So here's a young boy, not even up to 15. And anytime I go to the library, you see me reading newspapers. So there are times that when I don't come for the newspapers will be in like their pristine shape. And the librarian became my friend. Like anytime I enter, do you want the newspapers? Then beyond that, I realized I could also contribute to some of these newspapers. So I thought that, okay, I don't really have much arsenal in my reserves to be writing for Daily Graphic or Ghanaian Times. So why don't I start writing for Junior Graphic?
Okay.
So I was giving Junior Graphic content, letters to the editor, articles, to some extent, I was even drawing.
Okay.
I was even making cartoons for them. So that made me know that, look, once you put your mind to it, you can get published. And all this while, I've never thought of becoming a journalist. I just loved writing. I thought it's good to see your name in print. I mean, it's okay. So that's the earlier exposure I can say I had with journalism. So entering into journalism school, I finished SS. My results were good, and so my options were kind of. I had so many options. So I was thinking to myself, I'm a very practical person. I mean, without any disrespect to anyone, I didn't see myself reading all the sociology, psychology, and all those things. I thought to myself, what can I do practically? So when I finish school, I know I am this, and I know I'm that. So I was thinking along those lines. So I was like nursing, I was like this, I was like that. So I think it was one day I was in a bus from Birmingham, 37 to Birmingham. Then I saw Ghana Institute of Journalism. At that time, they had like a huge signpost. And I just had that light just go of like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. So I just told my dad, no, I think I want to be a journalist. And he also knew I love reading newspapers. So it was not so much of a difficult thing to convince him. So he gave me the money to purchase the forms. And that was the only school I applied to. In fact, in the whole of Ghana, I have never applied to any school, any university beyond GIJ. I applied for GIJ for my bachelor's. I went there for my master's. And that's it. I've never applied. Yeah.
So in applying to GIJ for the first time, you put all your eggs in one basket. How sure were you were going to get the admission? Because your results were that good, or?
I think that I never even thought of it that way. For me, I knew I want to be a journalist. From that time, I saw the signposts and I realized that, look, it aligns with what I've been doing, my interests. So back then, you would have people buy 2 forms, Legon, buy KNUST, buy UCC, but all those things did not appeal to me. I just knew I had to go to GIG from that point. So I bought the forms. I think it was 40 cities then. But at that time, it was like 400,000.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I bought the forms then, and Funny thing also is they never confirmed to me that I had admission. So
Oh,
I was yeah. So they were supposed to post the feedback. They're supposed
yes.
to post the feedback, acceptance and all the admission letter. And I waited and nothing was forthcoming. So I just got up one day and went all the way to the school. I'm like, what's happening? And not knowing, classes had even started
For your batch.
for my badge.
Oh.
And I was like, but you guys, I said, look, if you like, don't go and find the fees and come and pay. So at that time, I was like, okay, I'm angry, but this is not time for complaints. This is time
That's
to
right.
get to work.
Mm.
And my dad then, normally, he's also very forthcoming with all these bills here and there. But as a public servant, it takes a while to mobilize. So he's always like, okay, so if I need to do something, just give me time and let me know. But here's the case. I just called him. Admission has come. Classes have started. I need to raise funds. Like now, like today. And they even gave me a deadline. I think I went on a Wednesday and they told me by Friday I need to come and pay.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and my dad was kind of upset, but he understood his assignment. So he told me he would get it. And lo and behold, by the end of the day, he mobilized and got the funds for me to pay.
Wow.
And yeah, one of the first people, in fact, the first person I met when I went to school, my first colleague was Azuri Manasseh.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're in the same class. So when I went to school, I've been told classes have started, but they don't have a class today. So I was like, okay, let me go around and see if I can meet someone to talk to and find out. And then I met this guy and was like, oh, he's also in the same class. So okay. And then we hit it off from there.
I see. Now, you did a lot of newspaper towards the period you eventually made the decision to go to GIG. But you started your professional journalism practice. That is, I don't know whether internship was also with radio, but I see a lot of radio. I see multimedia. I see CTFM before Business and Financial Times came. Why didn't you pursue a print journalism, reality, since you had some writing growing up?
Well, I think I did a lot more print. Okay. I did a lot more print than any other medium. Okay. And even back in GIG, one of the first things I did was to join the editorial team of the school's publication. I don't know if it's still in existence, but it used to be called The Communicator. Yeah. So when I joined the team, Gary L. Smith was the circulations director. He would take the paper, be selling it in like around campus, on campus, and all that. So I joined it, and not long after, Gary was made the editor, and I became the circulations director.
Okay.
So I became more or less like the sales boy for the Communicator, going around selling it and blah 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 blah. And I think in a matter of a year or two, my commitment got me the topmost job. So I moved from circulations director all the way to the editor. So then I had the responsibility of now coordinating students to write articles, cover events myself, take pictures. I was like 1,000,000 because there's only much that some of the team members can do because everybody will say they came to school. Unlike in other places where some of these things will count as credit hours. It doesn't count. So if someone has to do something and the person doesn't want to do it, as the editor, you've got to do it yourself. No time for excuses. So I did a lot more of that until I left the job. So that was like level 300. So between level 300 and 400, and I started writing because at that point I think I had flexed my muscles a bit. So
Okay.
I started writing for like external organizations, my Job Online, Ghana Web, Modern Ghana and stuff. So I write articles. There were some that were even like assignment from class.
Okay. Yeah.
But because I thought they were good enough, then I'll send it to them. I remember one of them I sent to Ghanaian Times, even while I was still in school. And I had a full page. And for me, it was amazing because
Wow.
yeah, I was barely 22, 23, thereabout. And I'm having a full page in the Ghanaian Times, a national daily. And I knew I was really on the path. So when I finished GIJ, I had some, I think 3 months to my national service. And I picked all these clips and I walked all the way to the Ghanaian Times and I had to see who was in charge of the newsroom. And they directed me to this man, Reynolds, forgotten his full name, but I mean, he's a very nice man, but kind of difficult. I mean, if you're able to convince him, then it means that you know what you're about. And I went to him and I printed all my Job Online. I'm like, look, I mean, this is national service. My national service is like 3 months away because I finished here in June and national service would not start till like September. And I'm like, I'm waiting for national service, but I cannot sit at home. I want to volunteer in Ghanaian Times. Okay. So look, we just took JSS students on the official internship placement. So there's no place for you. I said, look, find somewhere for me. These guys that you've picked, I know in a month's time, they would leave.
That's right.
So then the option was, okay, go and come back after a month. But when you go and come back after a month, maybe he will change his mind. But if you find somewhere for you to pitch, every day he will see you. When these guys go, you can easily walk into whatever you want to do.
That's
right. I was there. They sent me to the proofreading department. And every day I would just wake up and go. And it continued till the guys left. And then they brought me to the newsroom. Then I became like a general assignment reporter, going around.
Before you continue, at the proofreading department, were you handling some scripts and going through them, or you were being taught how they do it?
Yeah, so my time there, I think, was short comparatively because of like 1 month. So when I went there, I think there was someone who would teach me how to. So they have a way of indicating that this has to be like a capital letter, this has to be a small letter.
Okay.
You need to insert a word here.
They should be deleted and those things.
Should be deleted and all that. So I was taught all those things. So there were times, but not that there were times after the short training, then they would give me scripts. I would do my best, then give it to my superiors, do my best, give it to my superiors. And that for me also taught me something because then you know how to treat a script even before it gets to those people, because you have an experience of working at the far end. So when it comes to the beginning, you know how to make your output suit the kind of requirement that they have. So I think that also helped. So I was at Ghanaian Times until I left for my national service, and the editor then, the supervisor of the newsroom, I was like, I'm going to Takrady. If I still want to work with them or I have something, I can still forward it to them. And she even gave me the contact of their correspondent in Takrady. But then when I went for national service, I realized there wasn't much time to even go around to change news, cover events and all that. So that ended my marriage with Ghanaian Times.
The scripts you were handling at the proofreading section, were they real scripts that had been written awaiting to be published? Or these were like old?
No.
Okay.
No, these were actual scripts. So they print the dummy of the newspaper. So when the stories have been laid, ready for publishing, it comes in that form. So you have a script, you have a news like a front page story to be edited, proofread, and then published. So they were not like a dummy.
Okay.
Dummy, yeah, no, not at all.
Wow. What has been the most difficult assignment you've covered as a journalist?
Most difficult, I think I've done so many assignments I've even lost count. But there was one that took me all the way to Bali, Indonesia, and
okay,
not necessarily the most difficult, but I think that it's kind of the most challenging because
okay.
Bali is not kind of far. Bali is far. And I spent like total flight time was like 23 hours, not to even talk about the layover here and there. And I got to Bali the following morning. I had to get out there and produce the goodies. So there was not any time for you to relax. I got to Bali about midnight, and by morning 6 a.m. you need to be up preparing for the business of the day and all that. So it was kind of challenging, but all in all, I think it was also rewarding.
How many more years are you ready to go with journalism before hanging your boots, or rather laying down your pen?
I've not really thought about it. So this is a confession. So I was actually branching into another aspect of communications.
Okay.
When the Columbia decision came, because I was thinking that look, there's another capacity in communications journalism that I can also serve my purpose. So that's where I was branching to. But when the admission from Columbia Journalism School came, like, no, I mean, this decision can wait another 2 or 3 years. So I've not really thought about when next I'm going to hang or lay down my pens, but then I'm sure it's not going to be far off. I don't see myself doing journalism beyond the next 5 years, and I may still be in journalism, but this thing about covering a beat, going on assignments here and there would probably not be my thing. I've gotten to understand to a level that I believe that I can also influence some of the young reporters coming out, because I've worked with a lot of people. I've also discovered people, a lot of young journalists, people who are now purposeful and all that. And I think that there's some other role I could play there that I can offer my, comparatively, I mean, there are people who have like 30, 25, 30 years experience. I don't have that, but I believe that the little I have, I can offer to some of these young journalists, because I've been in their position before. I've been like looking for internship and getting prepared and all that. So I think I can relate to them better and then give them the kind of advice that no one gave me at that time. And I hope by so doing, I'm able to influence their careers, towards a better trajectory.
There is some debate going on this platform, PENSDOWN. A good number of colleagues, seniors, and active practicing journalists alike keep telling me or keep saying that journalists should be licensed. What's your take?
Well, I think it's it will be very difficult for you to license journalists. I mean, I think for me, we need to even look at the practicality beyond what we wish. I mean, how do you license journalists? Do you want to control information? You can't control information. I mean, the world we live in is very difficult for you to control information. So when you bring in license, it's more or less like you're controlling the practice of like information flow and all that. And it's, for me, it's not possible. And we all know the kind of responsibilities like the freedom of expression and all that we have, which is derived from the Constitution. I mean, the moment you begin to bring some of these regulations, you are more or less trying to stifle free speech and all that. What I would suggest we do, there are so many organizations, right? And so many professional organizations, and even in journalism, we have so many professional journalism organizations, which are very useful and all that. We can have one which is very functional, which makes it a priority to train their members so that their product or whatever they work on is top notch. Nothing stops us from doing that. So we can use that approach. So with time, every journalist worth their salt would want to belong to that particular organization. I mean, it's not like it's compulsory, but then once you're able to create that value, people would associate like quality stuff with the organization. So to the extent that if a journalist is misbehaving and they look at their, they'll be like, oh, I'm not sure this guy is even a member of this organization. Because if you were to be that member, and be a member of that organization, he would not be acting in this way. So you are now pulling value. So that license would not be that strict, but you are selling value that people will buy into. People can choose to be outside, no problem. But once there's everybody will want to associate themselves with you. For me, I think that's approach. But it looks like it's a very difficult approach. So everybody would want to go the easy route. Let's license journalists. But then when you license them, what are you going to control? What are those who are not part of the organization? How are you going to handle them? What are you going to do to them? So licensing is not the right way to go.
Is there any public figure that you wish to interview and for some years, or you have not had the opportunity to interview?
Well, so when I was in like active practice, because I was doing a lot of business. All these people that you want, I mean, the bank CEOs, the BOG governor, and the Minister of Finance, and all that were people that we got to interact with on a daily basis. So right now, I cannot really think of someone within that space. But a lot of maybe tech companies, CEOs, and all that. Yeah. I think I also did a fair amount of them, unless we are looking at beyond Ghana. Then, yes, at a point I had really wanted to interview Madam Christine Lagarde, who is the former director of the IMF. Also, I think I got to ask her questions during press conferences and all that, but that's the farthest I went. But it's difficult to have these people sit down one-on-one with you when you're not working with Bloomberg, you're not working with FT. I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
I get you.
You need to be able to reach that level before you can get access to them.
There's a lot of attrition. So many trained, qualified professional journalists are seeking greener pastures, quote unquote, elsewhere. For some of them, it's in public relations or other aspects of communication. And for others, it's a complete goodbye to everything communication. What exactly is going on? What are your colleagues telling you?
Well, I think to start with, it's not really a Ghanaian phenomenon, to be honest with you. I remember once I attended a conference in South Africa, and that's one of the things they talked about. So they were asking, where do journalism graduates go? I mean, if we want to be even fair to the conversation, let's look at it from the point of entry from journalism school. After journalism school, how many of them even practice? And then let's say we can do after a year, after 5 years, after 10 years, and all that. You will see that I'm sure they even from journalism school to even the world of practice, a lot of people even drop off from there.
That's right.
A lot of trained journalists do not even do practice as journalists. I mean, I know people who have never. I mean, we sat in the same class and they've never published one work of
I
an
have
article or
classmates
anything.
like that too.
Yeah. So to start with, it's not really about even journalists and what they are transiting to. And I would say it's like I said initially, it's a general problem. Even here in the US, I mean, some of the people who have come to give us guest lectures and all that. I mean, some of them have moved on.
Okay.
And I think that as humans, what motivates us is always value. So you're always looking for a place where you can add value or a place where value can be added onto you. So most people will follow that. And few people would stay when there's an opportunity to move and the opportunity fulfills, I mean, value addition both to them and then to the organization. Few people will stay in the face of that because they think they have a calling. But I mean, most people are, I mean, they are within their rights to take that bait and move on. I mean, life is all about progress. So we just move. Yeah.
If we are to go back into time, some 20 years, would the decision from you still be journalism as a profession?
Well, I think that I have absolutely no regrets. I thought after like 10, like after 5 years into the profession, I probably saw myself doing a lot more community work, like development stuff and all that, project management and all that. But then, do I regret ever becoming a journalist? No, because the kind of opportunities journalism has opened to me, the people I've met on my travels and the travels itself. I love traveling, and I didn't know I love traveling until I started working as a journalist. And I mean, there were times before COVID, there were times I could go to like a different country, like every other month. So, and this was amazing because I see myself, if I had probably done, I mean, another course, not journalism, and I'm not practicing as a journalist, it would be very difficult for me to travel. And so I don't think I have any regrets whatsoever getting into journalism. Would I convince my son to go into journalism? Well, if he wants to do, I can't talk him out of it, because I mean, if journalism made your dad, why should your dad preach against it? But I'm not going to force him to do journalism, no, because no one forced me to do so. It's entirely his decision. If he wants to go into it, I'll give him my blessings, share my experience with him and guide him. But I won't force him to practice as a journalist.
The general position out there is that journalism doesn't pay, except that it opens opportunities. Do you buy into this?
Well, I think it's journalism pays if you do it right. And like every profession, there is demand and supply. Demand and supply, regardless of whether the demand is huge or the supply is huge. Once you add value, people would pay you well. And right now, if you don't add value or you don't add that much value, you can always be replaced, right? You can always be replaced. So what was the incentive to pay you more? I mean, that is not to say that journalists are not to be paid well. But I think it's a lot more demand and supply issue. And for me, when I worked at BNFT, I worked at CTFN. It will be very difficult for me to say I was poorly paid. I was poorly paid because at every point in time, I'm doing something niche, which added value. So people have no problem paying you. But of course, there are colleagues that you work with who are like paid 1/3 of your salary. Do you get it? And that is always difficult. It's always difficult. So I tell people when I have the opportunity that, look, in journalism, if you want to be paid, it's just like any other profession. If you want to be paid, specialize and become more like be in demand so that people will demand for your services. I know it's difficult, it's easier said than done, but nothing good comes easy. I'm not sure if I was doing like general reporting, covering assignment here and there, I would probably command the kind of salary, for instance, I had at CTF, and I'm not sure. That it took me a lot of pain. Listening to budget, going to Bank of Ghana meetings, hearing all sorts of jargons that you would think it's meant for PhD students. But then I was subjecting myself to it, whether I liked it or not. And in the end, it kind of paid off. And even coming here to the US, and it's almost the same thing. Specialize. There's room for general reporting, no two ways about it. But when you specialize, you realize that the demand for your services cuts across. Now we have been told 3 days ago, we had a guest lecture who was talking about the need for people to even specialize in crypto reporting because he's been there and he realized that there's a huge deficit. We've had someone also come in to tell us that stock market reporting is a thing to go. And these are very, 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 very niche topics or sectors to cover. There's someone who also told us to specialize in municipal bonds. And so you listen to all these people, they're all preaching different things, but then the main thing that cuts across is specialization. If you don't specialize, you remain a general reporter, and as a general reporter, you'll be paid like a general reporter. No two ways about it. But the difference between specialization and a general reporter, you can have as much as like $40,000 difference in salary. Like that is per annum.
Yeah.
But then you realize that specializing is a lot more difficult. If you want the money, you go for it.
Wow. This has been exciting. Thank you, my brother, for this conversation. But my final one, on the back of this, your submission, where you're talking about specializing. There are a lot of specialities in journalism. There is POS, there is environmental reporting, there is human rights, there is court and crime reporting, there is business journalism. Now, how and why did you settle on business journalism and not any other?
I think business journalism settled on me because when I was at my job, I was doing everything. I was doing health, I was doing entertainment, I was doing sports, I was doing everything.
Okay.
So when I wanted out and business and financial time became a possibility, I'm not really someone who runs away from change. I look at change from the perspective of, okay, what can I get out of it? And I'm not looking at what are the immediate difficulties or immediate challenges. So I'm like, okay, so even if I specialize business, I think it would make me unique because at the end of the day, I have a certain command over a particular sector, which is interesting. So I moved to Business and Financial Times. But you see, our market is not deep enough. The Ghanaian market is not deep enough because there are places where people are specializing in the minutest of sectors. Ghana, let's say, in a typical Business and Financial Times newsroom, you're going to have someone who focuses on technology, who focuses on economy, mining, pharmaceuticals, SMEs, and all that. But coming here, you would see even beneath these broad specialities, right, or specialization that you can have, there are people like focusing on very, very small sectors and becoming experts. So like I was saying,
could it be like, for instance, in mining as an area of specialization, somebody is looking at only gold?
Exactly. And even gold, you can have specializations, different kind of specializations, and that. When it comes to stock markets, there's forward, there's I think futures, options. I mean, there are so many things, but our market is not deep enough. So it's you kind of understand when people do, okay, so I'm covering the economy, which is broad because I mean, you can't be here and say covering the economy. Of course, you can have that general, but then you have people who are focusing on like let's say the Federal Reserve, which is like our Bank of Ghana. You have people focusing on the micro, so many different layers of specialization that you can have. But then our market doesn't allow. So one person can do sports, doing football, doing volleyball, doing this, doing that, I mean, and it's okay from that level. But once you become more developed, I hope some of these things will come up.
Yeah. This has been PENSDOWN, Journalism Journeys. That is what we talk here. Today, I've had the opportunity to speak with a colleague of mine, all the way from his base in New York. Richard Annerquaye Abbey is his name. He's a business journalist, currently a graduate student. We've taken a walk through how far he's come, the challenges and everything. And he's given us an idea how long he intends to stay in journalism after he's done with his program. We'll be back next time with another edition of PENSDOWN. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned.